Hi, I'm Bob Lang, Senior Editor of Popular Woodworking Magazine, and welcome to Shop Class on Demand. We've been using SketchUp at Popular Woodworking Magazine for a few years now, and it's really been a fantastic tool for us. We use it to plan projects before we build them. We also use it as a basis for illustrations that you see in print in the magazine. It effectively lets us build things twice. We build it in the model. We can visualize how things go together. We can see it in 3 dimensions. We can come in close to get details. We can check the sizes of parts. We can do all of this before we ever cut any wood. All in all, SketchUp has made us better woodworkers, and we think every woodworker can benefit from learning how to use this program. What we're going to do in this series of videos is share with you the things that we've learned so that you can model efficiently and accurately. In this session, we're going to add some details to a cabinet that are typical for woodworkers. We're going to take this simple cabinet and then we're going to add a dovetail drawer and some raised panel doors to it. Now just a note, I've already made the cabinet as a component and I saved it as a component. So one of the nice features about SketchUp is through the components window you can add and access components and build collections and store them on your computer. So let's begin to make a drawer by establishing the drawer face. So I'm going to take the rectangle tool and just snap from corner to corner in the opening of the face frame. Then I'll take push-pull. I'll make it 3/4 of an inch thick by typing in the measurements window. And when I have the shape established, I'll select that, make it a component, calling it drawer front. And you can see it appear in the components window. If I right-click on a component, I have the option to save as, and that will save the component as a separate file in a components library that I create. Now that I've got the front, I'll make another component for the drawer side. And I'm getting in position. The drawer side wants to go from here to the back, so I'll establish a couple of guidelines with the tape measure tool. This gives me a point I can snap to with the rectangle tool from the bottom corner to the top corner. And then I can pull this face to make it a 1/2 inch thick. And I'm just typing 1/2 after I begin the pull and then hitting enter. And now I can make this a component too. We'll call this drawer side. Now I don't need these guidelines anymore, so I'll erase them. Now I want to work on these two pieces in empty space, so I'm going to select both of them. Then I'm just going to move them on the red axis out into space. I'm typing 111, it's just an easy number to move it, and when I hit zoom extents, I've got it off in the distance here. The first thing I want to do is put some dovetails on the drawer side. So I'm going to orbit and pan and zoom to where I get a look at the side. I'll select it and right click and then select edit component from the menu. Now these are going to be half blind dovetails, so I'm going to use the tape measure, come back 1/2 inch just to establish a guideline. I want another guideline horizontally at the middle of the drawer side, so I can use the snap point to find the middle easily. Now I'll take the protractor tool from over on the toolbar, and with this I establish a starting point and a second point for a baseline. Then as I rotate the mouse, the angle appears in the measurements window. I can type in 15 or any other angle I want in degrees. I'll make another guideline in the opposite direction. This will give me a pin in the middle of the drawer side. Now I don't want them to come to the exact center, so I can move my guideline. I'll select the guideline, type M, and then simply move it up the blue axis 3/32 of an inch. I'll take the other line and move that in the opposite direction. Now I can take the pencil tool and just trace over the guidelines, and that'll establish the first pin. I'm going to erase these two guidelines. One of the things about SketchUp is it's easy to clutter your drawing with too many guidelines. So I try to get rid of those as soon as I can. Now I want to take this face and copy it. So I'll type M for the move tool, hit the control key, and come over to the snap point in the middle of the bottom edge of this face. I'll click on it, I'll come up to the top of the side and click again. Now I'm going to type the slash and the number 3, and that creates multiple equally spaced copies in between the original and the first copy. I'll do that in the opposite direction as well. Invoke move, press the control key, snap on the midpoint, drag it down on the blue axis. When I reach the edge, I'll click again, and then I'll type slash and 3, and that creates multiple copies. I don't need these extra lines above and below, so I'll simply select them, hit the delete key to remove them. When they're gone, I'll type P for push-pull and push the first pin completely through the side. For the rest of them, I can just double-click using the push-pull tool, and I can quickly make all the dovetails. Now I want to establish a groove for the drawer bottom to ride in. If I can get zoomed and panned around. Okay. On the inside, I want the groove to be centered on this lower tail. So I'll take the tape measure tool, I'll come up, and instead of trying to figure a number, I'll just let it hit the midpoint of this line. Then from there I'll come up 1/8 of an inch, then I'll also come down 1/8 of an inch. I'll take the rectangle tool, I'll snap on this point, zoom out, use the orbit and shift key to pan, and then I'll find the opposite corner at the other edge. Then I can push-pull this face, and I'm going to push it in 3/16. So that gives me a drawer side with dovetails on the front and a groove for the bottom. To make the dovetails at the back of the drawer side, I could repeat what I did at the front, but it's going to be quicker just to copy them. Before I do that though, I still have these guidelines from the original work putting in the groove. And if I click on them, I see that's part of the component. So I need to right click, hit edit component, then delete the guidelines. Then I'll close the component, make a copy of it, and I'm going to place it at the back of the original. Then I'll right click, use flip along to reverse its direction. Now I want to use the tape measure and establish a guideline at the back edge of the original drawer side. When I have that, I'm going to take the back component and just slide it in to the guideline, from the midpoint to the guideline. I'm going to right click and explode it. Now explode only affects the one instance of the component that I used it on. The other component is still a component. The components in the window are still okay. Well, I'm going to explode this side also. And now both of these are just lines and faces. There are a couple extra lines in there that I need to remove. So I'm going to switch to my X-ray view using a keyboard shortcut. I could also get there from the view menu. To remove these extra lines, I can draw a bounding box around them, hit the delete key, and get rid of them. I'm also going to get, well, I'm not going to get rid of the guideline. I'm going to move the geometry from the back end into position. Before I'll do that, I'll turn off the X-ray view. That gets a little confusing. I'll just select all the geometry at the end, take the move tool. When I come along the green axis, that stretches everything back to the point of the guideline. Now I can select the guideline and delete it. At this point, I'm going to select the drawer side, go back to make component, and give it the same name that it had before. When I click the create button, a pop-up comes up to warn me that it already exists and asks me if I want to replace it. I'll click yes. So now I have a drawer side with dovetails at both ends. Now that I have the dovetails complete on the side, I want to make matching set of pins on the drawer front. Now again, I could open the drawer front for editing, recreate by drawing all of this geometry, but it's much easier to simply copy what you have. That's one of the rules of SketchUp to become efficient, is don't draw unless you absolutely have to. So I'm going to start by moving the drawer side component into position with the drawer front. And again, I'm going to explode it to turn it back to lines and faces. And then I'm going to delete all of this that I don't need. Now what I've done may seem like I've destroyed something valuable, but I still have a complete drawer side over in the components window when I need it. I'll also explode the drawer front. Then I'll select all of this geometry, right click, and pick intersect from the menu. I'll check intersect selected, and that will join all of these lines together. At this point, all I need to do is push the spaces for the tails in. And again, after the first one, I can double click and SketchUp will remember the distance that I want to go. Now one thing you may notice here is some of these faces are white and some are gray. This is just good form in SketchUp, is to have faces pointing the right direction. The program doesn't always intuit what's inside and what's outside. So I can select all of these, right click, and reverse faces is one of the options on the menu. So now that I've got all of those, almost all of those, that one was hiding. And there's another one underneath. Now I can take these extra lines. I'm holding down the shift key so I can select all of them. You can see the little plus sign by the arrow letting me know that I can select as a group. When I have them all selected, I'll hit delete and make them disappear. Now there's a remnant of the groove down on this face, and I can use that to create a groove in the drawer front. So I'm going to take this line, I'm going to make a copy of it 3/16 of an inch in on the green axis. Now I can take the pencil tool, come out and start the line at a distance from the point I'm coming from. You can see here it gives me the point I can track along the green axis. When I get this other point, that's the beginning of the line. Now I can delete these two extra pieces. I can delete these that I no longer need. Then when I have them selected, I'll delete them. Come around so I can see what I'm doing. Use push-pull. I can take that groove to the other side of the drawer front. Now the only thing remaining to do is to copy the dovetails from one end to the other. To do that, I'm going to select this face. When you copy a face, it also copies all the lines around it, so you don't have to spend a lot of time selecting them individually. So I can just click from one outside corner to the other outside corner, and there I've created all of those lines with just a couple of clicks. Again, this is a situation where what was outside is now inside. I want to reverse those. Zoom in a little bit. I'll use push-pull to make these sockets 1/2 inch deep. I'm typing in for the first one, and now I can just double click or use a reference to get the remaining sockets. Now I can just select all of this, right click, and make component. And again, I'm redefining a component that I already have. So when I hit create, I'll get the pop-up window. I'll say yes. And now I have the drawer front as I want it to be. Now that I have the completed drawer front, just as in real life, I want to check and see how it fits with the side. Now the side disappeared. I destroyed it to get the geometry for making the front, but I've still got a copy in the components window. So I can click on it in that window, drag it into place, and it fits, but it's reversed. So I'll right click, select flip along the components red from the pop-up menu, and there I have it. Now for the other side, I can either drag in another component, or I can simply make a copy of this one and put it into position. I'll have to move it a little bit to get it right where I want it, and then I'll have to flip along the red axis again. Now I have two sides and a front for the drawer. It's time to make the back. To make the back, again, I could start over, but the back is going to be very similar to the front. So I'm going to make a copy of the front, move it close to the position I want it to be in, come around to get a good look at it. Then I'm going to right click. I'm going to select Make Unique from the menu. Make Unique copies the component and gives it a different name. Over here in the Components window, it shows up as drawer front number 1. I can come to the Entity Info window. I'm going to rename it Drawer Back. I can do this at any time. I'm just doing it now to avoid confusion. Now that I have it copied and renamed, I'm going to right click and select Edit Component. There are a few things I need to do to make the drawer front into a drawer back. First place, the height of the drawer back is going to end at the top of this groove. So I'm going to get in position where I can see what I'm doing. Take the line tool and extend this line below the dovetail. Then I can use push-pull, bring this back out. This leaves a couple extra lines that I don't need, and I'll go ahead and delete those. Then I want to spin around to the other end of it, and I'm using the mouse button to orbit and pan, also to zoom out with the scroll wheel, so I can find what I'm working on and getting close to make sure I'm doing what I want. Again, with the line tool, I'm just extending this line. This creates a face. I can use push-pull to bring it out. Leaves me a little extra geometry. I'll go ahead and delete. So the drawer back is now taking shape. It's still 3/4 of an inch thick, and I want it to be a 1/2 inch thick. So I'm going to take push-pull, select the big face, and just bring it in to the end. Now this made the face disappear. That's okay, we can deal with that in a moment. I have some extra bits and pieces to get rid of. And I also want to reestablish the face. So I'm going to come in as close as I can. This is going to be the new bottom edge of the drawer back. So I'll start a line. Now I can zoom in the middle of the line command using the zooming controls on the mouse button. I can come into an exact point. That reestablishes the face and gets me where I want. Now I can take the selection arrow, start grabbing geometry below the line, delete the pieces that I don't need. There they are. And I also have some extra remnants from the sockets. I can get the eraser tool, hold down the left mouse button. As I slide over those, they get highlighted. When I release the button, they disappear. And I'm going to check the other side. I have the same condition over here. If I can get in position. I can also get rid of these by using the select tool and the delete key. Now when I remove the lines that define those extra faces, the faces themselves disappear. So now I have my drawer back complete, except I have it still facing in the same direction that it was with the drawer front. So with the selection arrow, I'll select all of it, I'll right click, and I'll flip it along the green direction. Well, let's see how that fits. So that works as the drawer back, but now I realize there's an issue with the drawer side. I didn't think about how the bottom dovetail on the side was going to work with the drawer back when I first created it. But we'll take care of that by editing the side. This is another place where SketchUp is very easy and convenient to work with. Making changes isn't a big deal, and it isn't a cause for panic. Out in the shop, I'd probably be in trouble making this mistake. But in SketchUp I can change this pretty easily. So I'll come in to take a look at it, right click so I can edit the side, and I can see that I want to change the side to match the back. So I can add a few lines, and I'm coming in on the green axis till I get a snap point, and then creating a face, simply pushing that over to the other side. That puts the material back, but it leaves some extra lines. I'll get rid of those. Orbit around and remove them from the other side. Then I also want to come over, make this bottom edge straight from the top of the groove. So with the line tool, come along on the green axis. When I reach this point that's even with this line, some guides and inferences appear to keep me in the right place. So I can use push-pull and get rid of that. Again, this leaves me with some extra lines. And I'll just select those and delete them. There's a backwards face. So now I've fixed the drawer side to match the drawer back. I'll move it in position. And that's a lot better. Now in the process, I reversed the face on the drawer side. I'll just edit the component, click on that face, and now it looks the way it should. The last part to make for the drawer is the bottom. Now to make it, I can just take a rectangle and I can snap to existing points in the grooves. So I can establish the exact size without any measuring or laying out. When I have that back edge established, I can use push-pull, take it down to the back of the front. Now that leaves it a little bit short, but we'll fix that in a moment. First, I'm going to go ahead and make the drawer bottom a component. I'll select all the geometry, and I look at the highlight, and I've caught the drawer front in there, which I don't want. I have to be careful with what I grab, so I'm going to go to the face style, turn on the X-ray option, and now I can see that I'm selecting only the bottom. And when I right click on it, I can make a component and name it the drawer bottom. I'll change my view back. I have it in place. I still need to make it longer to fit the groove at the front. Now the X-ray view, I have a keyboard shortcut set up for it. And I'm going to edit the bottom component. This can be kind of hard to see, but it's a real time saver if I want to model in space. So the component's open for editing. I can come in, find the front of it, and pull it to the end of the groove in the front. If I want to check that, I can take the drawer side, move it out of the way, zoom on in and take a look, and I do have the drawer bottom into the depth of the groove. I'll use undo to put the side back. Now I can select the entire drawer, right click, and make that a component called drawer assembly. Now this is a nested component. The parts of it are the components of the drawer sides, the front, the back, and the bottom. but this lets me work on it as one unit, and I can move the entire drawer into place in my cabinet. So I have an entire drawer made, and it was really pretty easy to do with a minimum amount of measuring. If you recall, I snapped to the opening to begin with, and then based all the sizes off of that. I do want to take a minute to check and see how well it fits in the cabinet. And I can see I actually came up a little shorter than I intended. I forgot that the side moves in 1/2 inch to the drawer front component. Now in the shop, I'd be remaking drawer sides, but in SketchUp, I can change this pretty easily. I'll open the drawer assembly component for editing, then I'll select the back, move it into position against the back of the cabinet side. I'm waiting for the little tag to appear that says on face. That lets me know it's in the position I want. And I've got the back. Now I need to make the side a little longer. I'll right click, open it for editing. With a selection arrow, I'll grab all the geometry at the end, get the move tool going. Then I can use this to stretch everything back to the new length. That's closed the work on the side component. I need to come back now and work on the bottom. Again, I right click, select edit component. Now I can just use push pull to make the new length. So this is a good thing about SketchUp. It allowed me to catch a mistake I would have made. It also allowed me to correct it in just a few minutes. Now that I'm done with the drawer, I can move on and make the raised panel doors for the cabinet.